The skies over Earth darkened as an enormous fleet of alien ships descended from the stars. The Zihar, a species known across the galaxy for their brutal efficiency and advanced technology, had arrived. From their warships, thousands of smaller craft deployed over major cities, creating a sea of fire and chaos. Their invasion was swift, calculated, and deadly, everything the Zihar had planned for. The humans, for all their technological advances, had never anticipated such an assault. Cities that once stood as symbols of human achievement were obliterated in an instant. The first strike was brutal and left no room for hesitation. New York, Paris, Beijing, global icons of civilization, fell in mere hours, their skyscrapers reduced to rubble. The Zihar forces, with their energy weapons and precision strikes, left no time for panic. They had come to conquer, and they meant to do it quickly. On the ground, chaos reigned. The initial shock was overwhelming. Panic swept across the world as people fled, their leaders scrambling to respond. But the humans had one thing the Zihar had vastly underestimated: the will to survive. In the midst of the destruction, pockets of resistance began to form. Soldiers, civilians, anyone who could hold a weapon, came together. They weren't organized, they weren't prepared, but they fought. They fought for their homes, for their families, for their planet. And it didn't take long before the Zihar realized something. The humans weren't as easy to break as they thought. The Zihar had no concept of what drove these people. They had seen countless species crumble under their might, but humanity was different. The aliens had assumed they could quickly suppress resistance. They had thought Earth's military would be nothing more than a minor inconvenience. They had planned to take the planet's resources and leave behind nothing but a broken society. But the humans had something more than advanced technology. They had heart. They fought not because they had no choice, but because they refused to accept the idea of losing their home. Guerrilla tactics started to take root as humans fought back with what little they had. Civilians in small villages set traps and launched hit-and-run attacks, using the aliens' own technology against them. Soldiers, though outmatched, adapted to the environment, using their knowledge of Earth's terrain to launch ambushes and sabotage the alien forces. The Zihar commanders were frustrated. What had begun as a simple invasion had quickly turned into a prolonged conflict. Their superior weapons, designed to obliterate entire armies in a single strike, were being thwarted by human ingenuity. They began to feel an unfamiliar sense of doubt creeping in. These humans weren't supposed to be this resourceful. As the first few days of the invasion passed, the Zihar found themselves not only facing resistance, but facing it with increasing intensity. The Earth they thought they could easily claim had turned into a battlefield that was anything but predictable. And in every corner of the globe, the humans' defiance spread. The Zihar realized their initial assumptions about Earth's inhabitants might be their greatest mistake. But even with their backs against the wall, the humans weren't giving up. They were fighting for something more than survival. They were fighting for their very identity. And no matter how powerful the invaders seemed, the humans had something the Zihar could never fully understand: the unbreakable will to resist. The invasion had begun, but it was far from over. The question now was, could the Zihar adapt before they were overwhelmed by the one thing they couldn't account for: human tenacity? In the days following the initial onslaught, the world watched in horror as major cities crumbled. However, something incredible began to happen beneath the surface of the chaos. Pockets of resistance grew into something much larger, something the Zihar could not have predicted. In every corner of the globe, from the jungles of South America to the war-torn streets of the Middle East, people began to fight back. Military forces, long thought disorganized and under-equipped compared to the Zihar's technological superiority, found themselves using the environment to their advantage. Small, agile units took to guerrilla tactics, ambushing the invaders from the shadows. These weren't soldiers in the traditional sense. They were civilians, farmers, scientists, students, people who had never held a weapon before. But now, They found themselves transformed by necessity into warriors for the survival of their species. In the United States, a group of engineers from Silicon Valley managed to hack into the alien communication systems, sending out false signals that drew Zihar forces into traps. In the deserts of Africa, insurgents used their intimate knowledge of the land to build improvised explosive devices, picking off the invaders from hidden vantage points. Across Europe, former military leaders united disparate forces, organizing coordinated ambushes in cities like London, Berlin, and Rome. The Zihar, with their overwhelming firepower, had no counter to this kind of warfare. Their advanced weaponry could vaporize entire cities, but it couldn't predict where the next attack would come from. They found themselves facing an enemy that couldn't be pinpointed or easily destroyed. The human response was fluid and unpredictable. Every time they thought they had wiped out a resistance cell, another one would rise up in its place, more organized, more determined, and more dangerous. One particular incident shocked the Zihar more than any other. A group of resistance fighters in Eastern Europe managed to capture an alien scout ship. They quickly reverse-engineered the technology, unlocking the aliens' weapon systems and communication codes. It was a victory, not just in battle, but a psychological one. If humans could use the invaders' technology against them, what else could they do? While the invaders were reeling from the unexpected tactics of humanity, the Zihar began to question the assumptions they'd made about Earth's population. It wasn't just their ability to fight back, it was their resilience. The humans weren't just trying to survive. They were adapting to the invasion in ways the Zihar couldn't predict. Earth's population, despite their technological disadvantages, had something far more potent: the will to fight, to resist, and to persevere against overwhelming odds. On the battlefield, this resilience was evident. Where the Zihar had relied on sheer power, humans fought with heart. Each time the Zihar made a gain, they found themselves facing human ingenuity in a new form. A truck turned into a makeshift tank, an old radio signal turned into a trap, a university lab turned into a weapons research center. The Zihar began to realize that defeating humanity would not be as easy as they had assumed. For the first time since the invasion began, doubt crept into the minds of the alien commanders. They were losing soldiers. They were losing ground. They were losing the war, not because they were outnumbered or outmatched, but because they had failed to understand the one thing that made humanity unique: their refusal to give up, no matter the cost. As the days turned into weeks, the Zihar began to feel the weight of their underestimation. They were no longer the predators. They were becoming the prey. And humanity, once thought to be weak and fragile, had become a force that could no longer be ignored. Now, the Zihar had to make a decision: adapt to this new enemy, or risk total failure. But even as the invaders reeled from their losses, something else was stirring. Humanity's resistance was not just about survival, it was about something much deeper. The Zihar had opened a door that they might never be able to close. And humanity, it seemed, was just getting started. As the weeks of battle wore on, the Zihar forces began to realize that the conflict was escalating in ways they hadn't predicted. What had started as a swift military operation to subjugate a primitive planet was quickly spiraling into a protracted war. The humans, whom the Zihar had considered weak and unworthy of attention, were turning the tables, and their growing unity was becoming a force that could no longer be ignored. At first, the Zihar had thought their advanced weaponry and superior technology would guarantee their victory. Their massive warships could devastate entire cities, and their energy-based weapons could tear through human defenses like paper. Yet, every time they struck, the humans adapted. The more the Zihar pushed, the more unpredictable and determined humanity became. It was a dynamic the invaders hadn't anticipated. The more they tried to break humanity, the more resolute Earth's people became. The turning point came when the resistance groups, now far more organized and better equipped than ever before, began to form global alliances. What had started as isolated cells in remote regions of the world had grown into an interconnected network of fighters, engineers, strategists, and scientists. The previously fractured human society, with all its differences, came together with a singular purpose: to protect their planet and their way of life. The unification of humanity was the catalyst for a series of strategic victories. Leaders from across the globe, from both military and civilian backgrounds, united to form a centralized resistance command. They shared intelligence, pooled resources, and developed strategies that made the Zihars' technological advantages irrelevant. Old methods of warfare, guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and surprise attacks were now bolstered by stolen alien technology and new, human-made innovations. One such breakthrough came when a team of human scientists, working in secret in a small underground bunker, successfully reverse-engineered one of the Zihars' scout ships. Using a combination of their own knowledge of physics and a newfound understanding of the alien tech, they crafted makeshift EMP weapons designed to disable the Zihars' advanced systems. The first time one of these weapons was deployed, a Zihar command ship fell from the sky, its systems fried and its crew in disarray. The victory was a powerful statement to both sides. Humanity could not only survive, they could innovate at an astonishing rate. The Zihar, meanwhile, struggled to keep up. The humans' ability to quickly adapt and learn was beyond anything the Zihar had encountered. Each time they tried to crush a resistance group, the humans would rise up in new, unpredictable ways. The Zihar began to realize they were not facing an inferior species. They were facing an enemy that could outthink them, outmaneuver them, and outblast them. In one pivotal battle, a human-led unit in South America managed to hack into a Zihar communication network and feed false orders to their fleet. This caused widespread confusion and disarray, allowing human forces to strike with deadly precision. The alien forces, so used to operating with perfect coordination, found themselves scattered and vulnerable. With each small victory, humanity's confidence grew. They were no longer the helpless victims the Zihar had once perceived them to be. The humans now believed they could win, and this newfound belief made them more dangerous than ever. The Zihar, realizing that their technological might alone wasn't enough to crush this enemy, began to question their strategy. They could defeat Earth's cities, they could destroy its armies, but they could not break the spirit of its people. It became clear to the Zihar commanders that this war would not be won with overwhelming firepower alone. The humans had something far more powerful: an unwavering will to survive, and a capacity for innovation that defied all expectations. As humanity continued to rally and adapt, the Zihar found themselves on the back foot for the first time in the invasion. The aliens were losing more than just battles. They were losing control of the narrative. And that, more than anything else, was the true power of humanity. Earth's inhabitants had no intention of bowing down. No matter how advanced the Zihar were, they could never fully understand the strength of a species driven by a deep, innate need to survive and fight for their future. The Zihar were learning the hard way. Humanity wasn't a species to be easily conquered. It was a species that could and would fight until the very end. Zalzar stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring out into the abyss of space as the stars streaked past. His heart weighed heavy with a growing sense of unease. The war, which had seemed so simple in the beginning, was now spiraling out of control. Every plan he had put in motion had been thwarted in ways he hadn't anticipated. The humans, whom the Zihar had viewed as little more than insects beneath their feet, had proven to be something else entirely: unpredictable, relentless, and resourceful. The initial wave of the invasion had been swift, but as the weeks wore on, the Zihar forces began to experience staggering losses. Every battle was harder than the last. Resistance groups, once disorganized and scattered, had become increasingly coordinated and effective. The humans' innovative use of their own limited resources, combined with their ability to adapt to alien technology, had transformed the tide of the war. They were no longer the helpless creatures Zalzar had once assumed them to be. And worse, the humans were learning faster than his fleet could react. Zalzar paced restlessly as reports flooded in from his commanders. Several key military outposts had been destroyed by a series of human-led strikes. The scout ships, which once ruled the skies, were now vulnerable to sudden EMP bursts. The previously untouchable Zahar weapon systems were beginning to malfunction under the influence of human-engineered devices. Worse still, the Zahar ships, which had been the pinnacle of their technological superiority, were being systematically disabled and taken out one by one. But it wasn't just the battlefield losses that troubled Zalzar. It was the growing realization that the human spirit, which he had dismissed as weak and easily broken, was the true strength of this planet. Their refusal to surrender, their ingenuity in the face of insurmountable odds, was something the Zahar had never encountered before. Zalzar had faced wars, rebellions, and revolts across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for this, a species that did not simply fight to survive, but fought to overcome. The Zahar commanders had been sure of their victory, but now they were questioning everything. Had they misjudged humanity entirely? Zalzar's once unshakable confidence faltered. The Zahar Empire had dominated for centuries by bending other species to their will. Yet this planet, this species, had forced him into a corner. For the first time in his long career, he felt fear. He stood at the window of the command center, his mind racing. Should they press forward, risk more lives, and fight to crush the humans once and for all? Or should they retreat, cut their losses, and face the wrath of the Zahar Council for failing so catastrophically? Every course of action seemed filled with peril. The Zahar Council had placed him in charge of the invasion, and failure was not an option. Yet the longer the war dragged on, the more apparent it became that humanity was not going to submit easily. Zalzar felt trapped, as if he were a predator being hunted instead of the hunter. The humans were like no other species he had ever encountered. They adapted, learned, and fought with a ferocity that was both fascinating and terrifying. Every time his forces dealt a blow, they seemed to come back stronger. They were learning from their mistakes, while the Zahar struggled to find answers. The decision loomed over him: retreat or continue the invasion at the risk of total annihilation. He could almost hear the voices of his fellow commanders in his mind, each one pressuring him to make a decision. His people were demanding results, victory, glory, and resources. But could he really continue to sacrifice his forces to a war that seemed increasingly unwinnable? Zalzar clenched his fists. The fear, the doubt, the hesitation. It was all too human. He had underestimated them. And now, the consequences of that mistake were mounting. The humans were no longer just a minor inconvenience. They were the thing that could bring down the Zahar Empire. As the reports continued to pour in, a cold realization settled over Zalzar. This was no longer just a matter of winning or losing a battle. It was a test of will, of endurance. The question now was whether the Zahar had the resolve to crush this rebellion, or whether humanity's resolve would be the thing that broke them. The future of the invasion rested on his next move, and Zalzar knew that whatever choice he made, it would change the course of history forever. In the darkest hours of the war, when the skies above Earth were filled with the wreckage of fallen alien ships and the remnants of devastated cities, humanity had begun to regroup. The Resistance, once a collection of isolated cells scattered across the globe, had evolved into a unified force. Earth's people were no longer just trying to survive. They were fighting back with a renewed sense of purpose and strength. The Zahar had underestimated them once, but they would never make that mistake again. A new sense of urgency had gripped the resistance leaders. With every passing day, more human lives were lost, but so too were the invaders. The combined efforts of scientists, military leaders, engineers, and everyday civilians had turned Earth's last line of defense into a well-oiled machine of guerrilla warfare, innovation, and sheer determination. Humanity, once a fractured species, had found strength in unity. They had learned from their mistakes and built upon their successes, adapting their tactics and technology faster than the Zihar could keep up. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when humanity managed to capture a damaged Zihar warship. It was a gamble, dangerous and reckless, but it paid off. Scientists and engineers worked day and night to reverse engineer the alien technology. They studied the weapons systems, the propulsion engines, and the ship's communication network, learning to exploit the weaknesses in the Zihar's otherwise impenetrable technology. With this newfound knowledge, humanity was able to develop new weapons and countermeasures specifically designed to take down the Zihar fleet. A series of EMP bombs, powered by the human understanding of electromagnetic fields, were created to disable the alien ship's shields and communication systems. These bombs, though crude in comparison to Zihar technology, proved devastatingly effective when deployed during the next wave of attacks. It began with a series of lightning-fast strikes. Small teams, using stealth and surprise, infiltrated Zihar supply lines and key outposts. They used their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage, attacking from hidden positions and vanishing before the aliens could react. The Zihar's once dominant technological advantage was now being turned against them. Each successful operation made humanity bolder. In one of the most daring moves yet, a group of human resistance fighters managed to infiltrate the Zihar command ship in orbit. Using the stolen alien technology, they disabled the ship's weapon systems, allowing a human fleet of small fighters to move in undetected. The Zihar flagship, the symbol of the alien fleet's superiority, was struck and crippled. It was a stunning blow, one that shook the Zihar command structure to its core. They had never thought the humans capable of such a coordinated, sophisticated strike. For the first time since the invasion began, the Zihar were on the back foot. Their warships, once thought to be indestructible, were now vulnerable. Their armies, once unstoppable, were being decimated in unexpected skirmishes. The tide of the war had shifted, and the Zihar were no longer the predators. They were the prey. The alien forces had begun to realize that they were no longer facing a disorganized, defenseless species. They were facing a planet full of survivors, innovators, and fighters, each one with a personal stake in the outcome of this war. Humanity's ingenuity was their greatest weapon. They didn't just rely on brute force. They relied on their minds, their creativity, and their unyielding will to protect what they had. Zalzar, standing on the bridge of his warship, received the reports with a sinking feeling in his chest. The momentum had shifted, and there was no denying it any longer. The humans were not only surviving, they were winning. The decision he had been avoiding now loomed before him like a dark shadow. Should they escalate the war, throwing everything they had into an all-out offensive, or should they retreat, lick their wounds, and try to regroup before the humans delivered the final blow? The Zihar had believed their conquest of Earth would be swift and decisive. Now, every victory felt hollow. Humanity was not only resisting, they were evolving, and the alien invaders had no answer to that. The humans had shown them the true power of a species that would never back down. As the human counterattacks continued, Zalzar realized something that filled him with dread. The Zihar might have the technology to destroy worlds, but they had underestimated the one thing humanity possessed that was far stronger than any weapon: an unbreakable spirit. The Zihar fleet was on the edge of collapse. What had once been a seemingly invincible military force, equipped with the most advanced technology the galaxy had ever seen, was now being systematically dismantled by a species the Zihar had dismissed as nothing more than primitive creatures. The once proud empire was faltering, and its leaders, including Zalzar, were beginning to question everything. Zalzar had never known failure. He had risen through the ranks of the Zihar military by leading countless successful campaigns, each one more devastating than the last. But Earth, it seemed, was a different kind of challenge. The humans' resilience, their ingenuity, their refusal to accept defeat, it was something the Zihar had never encountered before. And now, it was threatening to undo everything the Zihar had worked for. The war was no longer just a matter of military tactics. It had become a battle of wills. The Zihar were no longer fighting to conquer a planet. They were fighting to maintain their pride, their empire, and their place in the galaxy. Every loss, every setback, made their situation worse. The humans were not only repelling the invaders, they were turning the tide of the war in their favor, and they were doing it with surprising speed. Zalzar had spent hours poring over intelligence reports, trying to find a way to regain the upper hand. The humans had stolen their technology, reverse-engineered their weapons, and adapted faster than the Zihar could anticipate. The alien fleet, once a symbol of invincibility, was now vulnerable. They had suffered devastating losses in the past few weeks, and the momentum was clearly on humanity's side. It was only a matter of time before the Resistance launched a full-scale assault on the remaining Zihar strongholds. The decision was made. Zalzar would have to escalate the war to a level that would leave no room for further resistance. The Zihar could not afford to lose Earth. If they did, their empire would be irrevocably weakened. The galaxy would see the Zihar as a species that could be beaten, and that would be the beginning of the end. Zalzar knew that the Zihar Council would not forgive him for failure, not after they had invested so much into the invasion of Earth. There was, however, one last card the Zihar could play, a weapon so devastating it could annihilate everything in its path, a weapon that could not only destroy Earth, but also send a message to the rest of the galaxy. Defy the Zihar, and this is what awaits you. The weapon was known as the Krell Bomb, a doomsday device capable of eradicating all life on a planet in a single massive explosion. The Zihar had kept it in reserve, knowing that its deployment would be a final measure, an absolute last resort. But with Earth on the verge of slipping from their grasp, Zalzar saw no other option. He summoned his top officers to the command center. "Prepare the Krell Bomb," he ordered, his voice cold and resolute. "We will not let Earth slip through our grasp. This war ends now." As the engineers and soldiers began to carry out his orders, Zalzar couldn't help but feel a twinge of doubt. The Krell Bomb was the ultimate weapon, but it was also a symbol of the Zihar's desperation. If they used it, they would lose not just the battle but the very essence of their victory. The humans would be gone, yes, but so would the planet they had sought to conquer. And yet, as the weapon was prepared, Zalzar pushed the doubt aside. There could be no turning back. The humans had proven themselves worthy of destruction. They had defied the Zihar in ways no species ever had, and now they would pay the price. As the countdown for the Krell Bomb began, Zalzar's thoughts turned to the strange, unnerving feeling he had about the humans. They were fighters, yes, but they were also survivors. And if there was one thing he had learned in all his years as a conqueror, it was that survivors were the hardest to eliminate. Just as the Zihar prepared to carry out their final solution, a sudden shift in the tactical situation sent shockwaves through the fleet. Humanity had one last move to make. Zalzar had underestimated them for the last time, and now his final act of desperation might be met with something he never expected. An even greater act of defiance. As the Zihar forces readied the Krell Bomb for deployment, humanity's resistance had already begun its most audacious plan yet. Every move they had made up until this point, from guerrilla tactics to technological theft, had been a step toward this final, decisive moment. The humans had known that their chances of winning this war rested not just on their ability to survive, but on their ability to surprise, outsmart, and outblast the Zihar. They had one last chance to turn the tide, and they were willing to risk everything. The Zihar had anticipated an attack, but not the scale or the nature of the humans' response. As the alien fleet prepared to launch the Krell Bomb, a message was intercepted by the Resistance, a signal that would change the course of the war. It was a carefully crafted, last-ditch effort from the human leadership, a call to action not just for their fighters on Earth, but for all of humanity. The message was simple but powerful. We fight not to survive. We fight to ensure that our world remains ours, and that no force, no empire, can ever again consider us weak. Earth belongs to us. The signal was broadcast to every corner of the planet. It was a unifying call that reached out to every civilian, every soldier, every scientist and engineer, no matter their race, nationality, or background. It was a declaration of intent. Humanity was not just fighting to protect their homes. They were fighting to take back control of their future. And the Zihar, for all their technological might, would not stop them. The resistance was ready. From every continent, from every corner of the world, coordinated attacks erupted simultaneously. Humanity's final push was not one of brute force, but of surgical precision. They would not engage in a drawn-out battle with the Zihar fleet. They would strike at the heart of the invaders' plans. In the skies above, a fleet of human-made ships, armed with reverse-engineered alien technology, descended toward the Zihar flagship. These were not the sleek, powerful warships the Zihar were accustomed to seeing, but scrappy, improvised vessels that used a combination of human engineering and stolen technology. Their weapons were simple but effective, designed to disable rather than destroy. Their goal was not to fight the Zihar on equal terms, but to cripple their command structure before the Krell bomb could be activated. The alien fleet, caught off guard by this sudden assault, struggled to maintain cohesion. The humans were everywhere, disrupting their communications, launching surprise strikes, and using the very alien tech that had once been their greatest advantage against them. Zihar warships faltered, their systems glitching as the EMP devices planted by human engineers sent shockwaves through their networks. It was chaos, a battlefield turned upside down, as the once dominant alien forces floundered, trying to regain control. Zalzar watched from his command center as the humans executed their plan with terrifying efficiency. His thoughts raced. The Krell bomb had been his last hope. If it failed now, the Zihar Empire would not just lose a war. They would lose face, their very reputation shattered across the galaxy. But as he watched the humans closing in on his flagship, a realization hit him like a blow to the chest. The humans had anticipated every move. They knew exactly what he was going to do. This wasn't just about stopping the bomb. It was about stopping him from making the same mistake the Zihar had made from the start, underestimating humanity. One human ship, a battered but determined vessel, launched a daring maneuver that sent it hurtling straight toward the Krell bomb chamber. The Zihar hadn't expected this. The bomb, a device designed to wipe out all life on Earth, was only a few moments from being activated when the human ship rammed into it, triggering a violent chain reaction. The bomb's detonation was imminent, but instead of destroying Earth, the ship's sacrificial impact scrambled the Zihar's control systems, causing a catastrophic malfunction. The resulting explosion wasn't the world-ending catastrophe the Zihar had planned. It was a localized implosion that disabled the Krell bomb and knocked the alien fleet into disarray. The bomb was deactivated, but the Zihar flagship was now in ruins, and with it, Zalzar's grip on the invasion faltered. It was the moment humanity had been waiting for. The alien fleet, disorganized and vulnerable, was ripe for the final blow. The human fleet surged forward, outnumbering and overpowering the remaining Zihar forces. This wasn't just a victory on the battlefield. It was a symbol of human resolve, ingenuity, and unity. The Zihar had made one critical error. They thought they could defeat a species that had never faced true unity. But the humans had come together, not as separate nations, but as one. And now, as the last remnants of the alien fleet retreated into the stars, the world stood on the brink of a new era. Humanity had proven its strength, and the Zihar would never forget the lesson. The final remnants of the Zihar fleet drifted into the void, retreating as their once mighty warships were reduced to drifting husks in space. Earth had been saved, not by superior technology, not by overwhelming firepower, but by sheer will and unity. The victory was not just a military achievement. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to a species that, when pushed to the brink, would rise up and defy the odds. In the days that followed, Earth was a planet of mixed emotions. Joy and relief washed over the global population as the news of their victory spread. Cities that had been shattered by the war slowly began to rebuild, and the fires of resistance that had burned across the world were finally extinguished. But with victory came reflection. Humanity had faced a war that had brought them to the edge of annihilation. The cost had been immense: lives lost, landscapes destroyed, and families torn apart. But the survivors stood together, united not just in their triumph, but in their determination to never again face such an existential threat. As the humans celebrated their victory, leaders from around the world met in a summit to discuss what came next. No longer divided by national borders, the human race had a new sense of purpose. The war had forged a new era of cooperation, an era where humanity would take its place among the stars, not as a subject to be conquered, but as a force to be reckoned with. Humanity had learned a vital lesson from their struggle, that unity was their greatest strength. They had once been fractured, divided by ideologies, cultures, and national identities. But in the face of a common enemy, they had come together, casting aside their differences for the survival of their species. The Zihar had underestimated the power of this unity, and it had ultimately been their downfall. The victory was not just a triumph for Earth, it sent ripples throughout the galaxy. News of the Zihar's defeat quickly spread to other civilizations, and the once feared empire's reputation crumbled. The other galactic species, who had watched in silence as the Zihar expanded their reach, were left stunned. They had assumed the Zihar were invincible, that no one could challenge them. But the humans had done the unthinkable. Zalzar, once confident in his victory, had now become a symbol of the Zihar's failure. The Zihar Empire, which had been a juggernaut, now faced rebellion from within and wariness from all corners of the galaxy. They had not just lost a war, they had lost their place at the top of the galactic hierarchy. Their invasion of Earth had not only shattered their power, but had ignited a spark in other species, one that would no longer accept domination by the Zihar. The humans had become the rallying cry for the oppressed, the symbol of defiance and hope. On Earth, humanity was not content with merely surviving the invasion. They sought to ensure that no such threat could ever again arise. The Global Summit established a new interplanetary defense initiative, pooling the knowledge and resources of every nation on Earth. And as humanity's understanding of alien technology continued to grow, they began to develop their own spacefaring fleet, one that would rival the Zihar's, should any future invaders dare to threaten Earth again. Yet it wasn't just technology that humanity focused on. They also focused on diplomacy, seeking to establish peaceful relations with other civilizations across the galaxy. While the Zihar's arrogance had blinded them to the potential of cooperation, humanity understood that peace, when possible, was the greatest victory of all. Earth's leaders sought to forge alliances, offering the galaxy a new way forward, one where the mistakes of the past, of conquest and subjugation, would not be repeated. Humanity's legacy, now forever intertwined with the victory over the Zihar, was one of resilience, adaptability, and an unshakable belief in their ability to change the course of their future. The war had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but it had also awakened something powerful within them. A collective resolve to never again let fear and division dictate their path. And as Earth's first steps into the greater galaxy began, there was a sense of purpose that would guide humanity for centuries to come. They had faced the unimaginable and had emerged victorious. The story of their survival would echo through the stars, a reminder to all. Humanity may have been underestimated once, but never again. The galaxy would know, beyond a doubt, that Earth was no longer a weak, insignificant world. It was a force that would shape the future.